Hello, friends and adventurers. Our podcast has been supported for months now by Misty Mountain Gaming, and they're now rewarding you, our listeners, with savings on all their fine D&D products such as metal dice, stone dice, glass dice, miniatures, adventures, dice trays, and more. You can use the code TWINS10, that's TWINS10, to save 10% on all purchases made in their online store at mistymountaingaming.com. Every code redeemed helps support Steven and I, and encourages us to make more and better content for you. So be sure to use code TWINS10 whenever you're buying premium Dungeons & Dragons dice and gear from our good friends at mistymountaingaming.com. Okay, on with the show.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of Bardic Twinspiration. Thanks for coming back as we continue to review the new playtest content that has been released by Wizards of the Coast. Theoretically, a preview of what 6e is going to look like, currently being called One D&D. As promised, Bardic Twinspiration is going rogue this week by taking a look at the final of the expert classes, the Rogue class. As always, I'm joined by my brother, the D&D wannabe.
Do you want to say who you are, or just introduce me? I'm also joined by my brother, Steven.
So, Rob, how are we feeling about the expert classes so far, as we move into looking at this final one?
So, it's interesting from just a design standpoint, the direction that Dungeons & Dragons is looking to move going forward. Right now, I'm pretty positive about it. I'm actually pretty excited to try out the new edition of D&D. I know that there have been edition wars previous and still ongoing, I would dare say, of this edition was better than that edition, and oh, I don't play that edition, I only play this edition. And I've kind of bounced around them, but 5e has always been home. But if 6e looks very much like this, I'm probably down to make the switch. Now, I am saying that with them handing me 2 of my 3 favorite classes as their first drop of new material.
Those being the Ranger and the Bard, correct?
Those being the Bard and the Rogue, as far as 5th edition is concerned. But, as we saw in the last episode, if you haven't listened to it, go check out why I am now more excited to play a 1 D&D Ranger than anything else right now.
Yes, finally the bards have been taken down. A peg, in Rob's estimation.
We're going to change the name of the podcast to something
Ranger Twinspiration.
Something Ranger related.
I still like my Ranger Things joke. And I'm pretty sure that there's a joke to be had in terms of bards going down, in Rob's estimation.
I'm going to have to leave that pause in. That's going to be very confusing in the edit.
So, taking a look at the Rogue, I think that as we go through these class features and what you get at every level, we're going to see a lot of things that are very familiar from what we've gotten used to from 5th edition. Now, a lot of things are going to be rearranged. There are going to be a couple of little subtle tweaks, some nuances that have changed that are going to make it a little bit different at the end of the day. But as I go through these features, I'm going to be saying a lot of very familiar words, and we're going to be describing a lot of very familiar features, just kind of in a different order, I think.
It kind of reminds me of one of your kids' puzzles. Like, I very clearly know what all these things are. They're just in different places than they ought to be. And they've just been scrambled somewhat. But yeah, there are differences. But this is very recognizably the 5th edition Rogue. I think the 5th edition Rogue was good, maybe a little too good at some things. And so this is kind of a class that might see the closest thing to a nerf as we go through. A very subtle one, but it's still there. But it's very, very recognizably the 5th edition Rogue. Just with a curly Q haircut and glasses and calling itself Clark Kent.
Yeah, like the little Groucho Marx disguise or something.
Something like that, yes. Nah, I'm a completely different rogue. I don't know what you're talking about.
Here's the thing that I thought as I was going through the Bard and the Ranger. I looked at the kit that they had been given, what we've been presented with from levels 1 to 20, and I thought, this is just strictly better than what we've been given in 5th edition. I thought that for the Bard, and I thought that for the Ranger.
I thought that for the Ranger.
Well, looking at the Rogue, I don't necessarily feel that way. You said that, you're going to see some things that are rearranged. I feel like even though we have all the same colors of the rainbow presented here across these subclass features, I don't think that I like Boy R. Jiv as much as I liked Roy G. Biv.
I guess I get what you're talking about, but I bet our listeners don't. So why don't we go ahead and dig into the meat of this? Let's start out at level 1, and as we've been going, we have been looking at the starting kit, and it's very recognizably a rogue to everyone who started out with 5e. Same saving throws, same thieves' tools. Interestingly, they did lose a optional skill proficiency. For some reason, One D&D doesn't think that rogues should be good at performance.
I don't know that I actually took performance a lot as my rogues, so I'm not really going to miss this. It is just another case of probably trying to differentiate between the classes a little bit more. Although if the rogue doesn't have performance proficiency, I'm kind of wondering which other classes are going to get it.
I'm thinking none.
Yeah, obviously the Bard has it, but I'm thinking, is that going to be an option they present to paladins, barbarians, monks? Or is this going to be one that you just have to pick with your unlocked proficiencies that you get from your background?
I mean, if so, that's a little stymieing, and I won't dig back into this like we were talking in the Ranger episode, but I do like having options. I like having very particular character themes and character functions, and having to give up a proficiency that really wasn't hurting anything. I mean, fair, it wasn't helping anything either, but it obliges me to pick something somewhere that I could have picked something else. All the same, I'm not quibbling. I don't think I've ever played a rogue that took proficiency in performance, and I doubt I'm going to start now.
I don't think there's going to be too many people who are going to be upset about the loss of the performance skill proficiency option, but there might be a few people who are upset about some of the weapon proficiency changes. 6th edition rogues are only going to be proficient in simple weapons and martial weapons that have the finesse property. That is almost everything that the Rogue had in 5th edition, with a couple of notable exceptions that are now missing.
So, martial weapons with finesse property, what's that? That's basically 2 things, right? That's rapiers and scimitars. Am I missing one?
Well, it used to be short swords, but now those have been moved to simple weapons, which we agreed in one of our previous episodes was a very positive change.
So, really, the only 2 things that they're losing are hand crossbows, which is, don't get me wrong, that is a great rogue weapon.
That feels like a big deal.
And longswords, which you don't get your sneak attack on. So I'm not even sure why they had longsword proficiency in the first place.
Yeah, I don't know of a lot of rogues that used to use longswords because it does kind of take the wind out of your sails as a rogue because you don't get to use your primary class feature. But
the rapier is right there. It does the same thing.
But hand crossbows, I feel like is going to be gravely missed. I can see people lining up for the funeral now.
I wonder, does that just mean hand crossbows aren't a thing in 1D&D? Because if the rogue doesn't have it, who does?
I doubt it because I've taken a look at the crossbow expert feat, and it does mention the existence of crossbows that have the light property. So unless they have just given the normal crossbow the light property, then I'm just assuming that there will be a hand crossbow that possesses it.
Well, then I'm not sure who it's left for, I guess. Rangers, maybe. Bards didn't get it. That was a good bard weapon once upon a time. And I've probably got better things to do as other martial classes like barbarians and fighters and paladins. So, I don't know, maybe hand crossbows are just going to be overlooked. Or maybe that's something you have to take a feat to be proficient in.
If that is the case, I think it's worth taking a feat to be able to get hand crossbows back as a rogue. That said, I feel like they could have just given it to us, and maybe that's a change they'll make as they transition to the final version of 1D&D, and I hope that they do. But as it is currently presented, that is an obvious omission.
And I also like the idea of a light crossbow wielding rogue, in more urban environments and whatnot. Crossbows, for some reason, feel more urban. I guess it's because of the extra mechanics involved, as opposed to the short bow and long bow that I imagine rangers using and outdoorsmen using and hunters using.
Sure, and also it's, fairly easy to conceal, by comparison.
I don't know why they would. If they change the way the finesse property works, maybe for some reason hand crossbows have the finesse property.
I considered that, but since the finesse property goes both ways and allows you to use either your strength or your dexterity, I would be surprised if they added the possibility to use your strength with a hand crossbow.
I think if they did, they would be redefining how finesse works. Maybe there would be another property that allows you to use dexterity-based weapons with your strength. I don't know. This is all theory.
They could do whatever they want. They could redesign the whole game around this, or they could just say, and you get freaking hand crossbows. And I kind of feel like that's the way they should go about it.
But this is all theory. Let's go to what is in black and white. Let's go to first level, and first level for a rogue is a busy level. Now that I've seen the other two classes, the fact that bards' early levels kinda suck hurts even more. I'm more offended.
First level rogues are going to get the same 3 features that they got in 5th edition. They're going to get expertise, they're going to unlock the ability to make sneak attacks, and they're going to get the Thieves' Cant language. I'll go ahead and cover that last one because it's very straightforward. You learn a new language. It's Thieves' Cant. You're communicating through signals and subtext and code words what you don't want other people to hear you say overtly. It takes about 4 times as long to say anything this way as it does to speak your message plainly. And that feature is unchanged from 5th edition in all but one way. Thieves' Cant, the language, has not changed, but Thieves' Cant, the feature in One D&D, also allows you to unlock an additional language proficiency on top of Thieves' Cant as a level 1 rogue. And this language is not limited by the standard or rare language tables, which is a thing now. Was it a thing in 5th edition?
It was kind of a thing in 5th edition, but that's an important point because any language, as far as we know, we only have those 2 classifications of language, standard and rare. So this means, and I'm not sure if they're going to be putting more emphasis on this than there was in 5e or tying any more mechanics to it. I would love to see a language table get the treatment that the tools did in Xanathar's Guide, where knowing a language enables you to interact with the world in certain ways or give you advantage in certain checks. But I guess this is as powerful as the edition wants it to be. But it's an exciting prospect to me. The more things that are on my sheet, the happier I am.
Right. And it just unlocks a lot of different social opportunities if your DM is having a lot of people that don't speak common or a lot of people that you want to communicate with without everyone being able to understand what you're saying. So the new Thieves' Cant feature, strictly better than the old Thieves' Cant feature, just by virtue of you get a second language on top of the special Thieves' Code.
At first level, rogues also get the expertise class feature. This works exactly the same way it did last week and the week before for rangers and bards. This is standard rogue fare. They get twice as good at some things as everyone else has any reason to be. It is a hallmark of the expert group of classes, and I'm never going to dislike this when it comes up. This is my jam, just being good at stuff.
And just like with the Ranger and the Bard, we're going to see this feature come up again later on. You will eventually get to be an expert at even more things as you continue to level up in this class.
Then there is the hallmark, the trademark rogue ability of sneak attack. This, on the surface, looks exactly like it was in 5e, and for the most part, it is. When you attack someone, if you have advantage on the attack roll, or have a non-incapacitated ally within 5 feet of your target, and you are wielding the correct type of weapon, you get to deal extra damage. And that damage is going to increase as your level increases, eventually reaching a staggering 10d6.
That's right. As long as you're wielding a finesse or ranged weapon and you meet Rob's other prerequisites that he already mentioned, and you don't have disadvantage on the roll, you'll be dealing an extra 1d6 damage, and that will increase by an additional 1d6 every 2 levels between now and 19th level when it maxes out at 10d6. As Rob said, this functions almost identically to the way it did in 5th edition, with a single notable exception. In this playtest material that has been released for One D&D, sneak attack can only be triggered once on each of your turns when you take the attack action. In 5th edition, sneak attack could only be applied once per turn when you make an attack. Those seem minor, but it is a pretty significant difference when you consider the fact that things like opportunity attacks or another player's class features might allow you to make attacks on subsequent turns before yours comes back around. In 5th edition, you could add sneak attack to those rolls. And if you have a feature that allows you to make an attack with your bonus action, it is ineligible for sneak attack as well. It is only during the attacks you make as part of the attack action. Now, for those of you who are used to being a rogue who wielded 2 weapons and could get to make a second attack as their bonus action in order to try to get that crit in 5th edition, you do still have the ability to make an offhand attack as part of your attack action as long as you're wielding 2 light weapons. So there is still the possibility of getting 2 chances at this per turn, but it is only those 2 chances and only on your turn.
And again, that's assuming you are taking advantage of that 2-weapon fighting. If you are wielding a ranged weapon, as is your prerogative, you've got 1 shot in a very Alexander Hamilton kind of way.
You're at risk of throwing away your shot.
Right. So I'll put this out there. Rogue was my second favorite class in 5e. I played one up to 14th level in the Tomb of Annihilation, and I didn't roll sneak attack damage on other people's turns. I didn't use attacks of opportunity and get that damage. I'm not sure if me and my dungeon master just weren't clear on this particular aspect of the rules, or if it just rarely came up, or if I just wasn't interested in doing it. It was a little while ago. I don't exactly remember. But I felt powerful. I felt effective. I felt good playing this class lacking that ability. So while I'm sure this is ruining someone's day, that we no longer have that option, it feels the same to me. In fact, I dare say it was probably what the publishers at Wizards of the Coast intended back in the day when they wrote that paragraph about sneak attack in the old player's handbook. And players being players, they just found a loophole and exploited it. And now that they have the opportunity to write a new edition, they have defined their terms.
I would not be surprised if that was the case. And I'm glad to hear that you were able to enjoy playing a rogue even without this feature. So you will probably continue to enjoy playing a rogue in One D&D. I do know that there are a lot of people out there who are upset by this because they had planned their character around being able to make sneak attacks as often as possible. And to those people, we're sorry. We didn't write this stuff. We're just reading what's on the page.
Look, we're the messengers. Don't shoot the messengers. Especially not if you know sneak attack.
On a personal note, I am always sad to see a character get less powerful. And so I, too, lament this loss. It's probably not a deal breaker for me either. But it is empirically, categorically a nerf, even if it is a small one.
You know, I can't believe we're waiting all the way to the rogue to say this. That's one of the things that a new edition should do, in my mind, is fight the power creep of the previous edition, and is get everything back under control, because they're going to have 8 more years of subclasses and errata and fixes coming out after 2024 when One D&D is actually launched, where the power level is going to build, and we need to start somewhere. So the fact that we've reined it back in a little bit, not the worst thing in the world.
You know what? I completely agree with that philosophy. I don't know why it didn't apply to the Bard and the Ranger, and suddenly it's only starting here with the Rogue.
Look, they might have been overcompensating a little bit with the Ranger, and the
Look
Bard...
what they did to my baby boy.
In my defense, I think the Bard did get a little bit scaled back. They got different abilities. They didn't get more powerful abilities. They didn't get less powerful abilities, and I think future subclasses will continue to thrust them to the forefront where they belong.
I, at one point, agreed with you. Like, when we recorded the episode, I was a little bit, you know what, it's different, but it's probably about the same. After we finished recording, I realized just how good Magical Secrets was when you took into account prepared spellcasting.
Mm-hmm. If you heard the correction, Rob, come in, I credited you with, like, oh, Steve told me that, oh no, you get Wish.
Yes, I asked Rob if he wouldn't mind one of us going back and dropping those in, and my goodness, that just made it so much better. In my opinion, Bards just ran away with this thing just as much as the Ranger did. And I hope at some point as we go through these levels with the Rogue, I will begin to feel that way as well. So far, we've got one ability that went slightly better and one ability that went slightly worse. Let's keep pressing on and see how things go forward.
All right. From level 1, big shocker, we progress to level 2. Level 2 looks exactly the same from 5th edition. You get Cunning Action. It allows you to use your bonus action on each of your turns to make the dash, disengage, or hide actions.
Kind of nice to have an ability that didn't change from 5th edition. We can just say, hey, it's that thing you like.
Yeah, this is cozy. This is familiar. This feels like home. This is chocolate chips, apple pie, and cornbread. But really, it is nice that they had a good ability from the Rogue that made a comeback. And furthermore, as someone who loves two-weapon fighting, if you remember the dual-wielding feat from our feats episode, you know I like rushing into battle with a weapon in each hand. If I'm playing that kind of Rogue, my bonus action is no longer taken up by choosing that style of combat. So now I'm going to be able to use that bonus action more often in 1D&D than I was in 5e.
You know what? I can't do it, Rob. I can't let us just breeze through the second level and say, hey, wasn't that easy? I've got to make it a little bit more complicated. I think that Cunning Action actually did get a little bit better than it was in 5th edition by virtue of the fact that the hide action has now been codified. Stealth and hiding in 5th edition was always kind of an arcane moving target that had to be explained by the dungeon master, it seemed like. Yes, there were rules for it, but you had to consult so many different areas of the dungeon master's guide to be able to piece it together.
And the player's handbook, and sometimes Anathar's. I actually tried to make a YouTube video on stealth and hiding and gave up. Because it was just too all over the place, and things that made sense to me I couldn't find written down, and stuff that I found written down didn't make sense to me. And, I was definitely going to talk about this when we got to the glossary stuff, but go ahead, tease it for me. Tease it, if you would.
So, to Rob's point, I feel like Rob and I have a pretty good understanding of what it means to stealth and be stealthed, to hide and be hidden in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, but we had to do a lot of work to get there, guys. And in 1D&D, it's very simple. It's 2 very short paragraphs. When you take the hide action, you just have to make a stealth check, meeting or exceeding a DC of 15, while you are either heavily obscured or behind 3/4 or more cover, breaking the enemy's line of sight. If you do that, you gain the hidden condition, and other creatures must make a perception check in order to find you.
And this is the part that is very important to me, and we'll cover it when we get there. It defines for you what cancels the hidden condition, what triggers you being seen again, which was always a point of very polite contention between myself as a rogue and my dungeon master, or myself as a dungeon master and my players. So, you're right, that is worth saying. The hide action and the search action that we will probably be talking about a little bit later, being simplified so much, makes them more attractive options to use in the game, especially in high-stress situations like combat. And the rogue, of course, is going to want to take advantage of that. I think, as a rogue, I took more cunning actions to dash and disengage than I did hide in 5e, but it's probably going to be a lot more even mix now.
And don't worry, the hide action does have a couple of little nuances that mean we're still going to spend some time discussing it when we get to the glossary, but I think that's sufficient to talk about here as part of the cunning action options. So, moving on to 3rd level for the rogues, because we've hit an odd-numbered level, you now get an increase in your sneak attack die, going up from 1d6 to 2d6. And finally, as with all the other classes that we've seen so far, you get your roguish archetype, your subclass feature.
Which they're done calling an archetype. Honestly, because my first 5e character was a rogue, I called all subclasses archetypes. Because that was, roguish archetype was the first thing that I knew. And now I can just call them all subclasses. That's just a nice little gift. Thank you, 1D&D.
Yes, I'm sorry. I was looking at the 5th edition page still. Yes, it is your roguish subclass.
Now, if we could, you made a suggestion off mic that maybe we should go through as we got the subclass features and talk about them at the appropriate level. And I initially decided against that, and that was why we used the format we did in the previous 2 episodes. But I think there is something to be said for going ahead and putting it where it belongs in the level progression. So let's go ahead and talk about what the new rogue subclass, or not so new rogue subclass, the thief, gets at level 3.
When will you learn that all my ideas are good ones? Anyway, scrolling down to take a look at the thief subclass. As in 5th edition, when a rogue selects their archetype, now dubbed simply subclass, you get 2 separate subclass features right off the bat. In both 1D&D and in 5th edition, the 2 subclasses that a thief gets are fast hands and second story work.
And we didn't talk about this, by the way, for the ranger or the bard, but I'm going to mention it for the thief just as a quick reminder. The thief subclass is meant to be, and this will seem obvious when I say it, a thief.
Gasp.
This is meant to be an infiltrator. This is meant to be a criminal. This is meant to be someone who is able to get in and out of dangerous places and who is able to handle mysterious, valuable, or magical artifacts. That was the theme in 5th edition as well. That's the theme here. And I think the few changes that we see to the thief subclass itself do reflect that theme. But anyway, for some reason I felt the need to say that. Let's go on and talk about what the features actually do.
Let's go ahead and take a look at second story work, because I feel like that's the easy one. You're trained to reach especially hard to reach places, and as such, you now gain a climb speed equal to your walking speed. Kind of like the ranger did at one of their levels, they got climbing and swimming. The rogue thief at least gets climbing.
Okay, so cool. A new movement speed type. We've only seen that so far with the ranger, as you mentioned, and they got it at a significantly higher level, at 7th level. Still single digits, but that's 4 levels away, man. That's years in adventuring time. That is something nice you can go ahead and enjoy, and it emphasizes the fact that rogues are comfortable in urban environments. You said yourself that rangers should be the experts outside, bards should be the experts in social situations, and here's the rogue climbing around buildings and infiltrating, doing literal second story work. This is a good feature, and it's coming at a good time, and it will continue to be useful through the rest of the level progression.
Now, this part of the feature is unchanged, but the second half of second story work regarding how far you can jump has changed a little bit since 5th. Now, in 1D&D, when you take the jump action, you can now make a dexterity check to jump instead of a strength check to jump. So, the jump action didn't even exist in 5th edition. So, this is allowing the thief to still get a benefit in a way that other dexterity classes would not. So, Rob, tell me about the jump action and why this is important.
This is a weird change, I'm going to admit. Jumping in 5e used to be tied to a static number. It used to be tied to your strength score. It made your strength score useful in more than just hitting with melee weapons and determining how much you could carry. Let's face it, strength and constitution are the 2 least useful things on your character sheet.
They are.
I mean, you could argue intelligence, but at least intelligence applies to more things that you may or may not be using.
Now, granted, different characters have different emphases, but across the board, every spellcaster's skill is going to be important. Everyone's going to care about their dexterity for their armor class. Everyone's going to care about their constitution for their hit points. And there's a lot of skills that are tied to the 3 mental stats.
And there's so much of the game is tied to dexterity. I mean, oh my goodness.
Conversely, there's only 1 skill proficiency that is tied to strength and 0 that are tied to constitution.
Well, strength, I think, is going to be the ability score tied to acrobatics now, if you look closely at this PDF, but still.
Oh, well, I was just talking about in 5th edition.
In 5th edition, yes.
In 1D&D, I hope that they change that and make some of these things more relevant. But in 5th edition, yes, strength and constitution were sadly lacking in terms of their versatility.
I want a constitution skill called just Get Crunk and just be able to have a proficiency in partying. Anyway, the jump action used to be tied to your strength score. You fulfill the requirements and you jump a distance determined by that number. Now it's a check. You must have some amount of speed. You can't be incapacitated. You can't be grappled. You can't jump if you can't move. And if you don't move enough, you have disadvantage on the check. If you fail a check, which is only a DC 10, then you do a little bunny hop. If you succeed, you jump a number of feet equal to your roll, or half that number if you're jumping vertically instead of horizontally. There is a lot more swing in how far you can jump in One D&D. I guess they're wanting more excitement, they're wanting more variability, they're wanting you to touch that D20 more, but this is what we're talking about when we're talking about second story work for the rogue.
Whew, I'm glad that this is codified. It's actually not that complicated, but I had to read it twice to make sure that I understood it correctly. And at the end of the day, I am very glad that the thief has a different option than using their strength score for this. Because otherwise, that second story work isn't going to do you much good.
Yeah, the rogue's whole deal, and I wanted to mention this at the start of the episode, is they have one ability score for everything. Like maybe there's a subclass that's going to get that intelligence involved, because rogues are thought to be these intelligent and savvy characters, but oh my goodness, everything in their kit depends on their dexterity score, and only their dexterity score. And now the second story work for the thief reinforces that. You need to max one ability score, and you're going to be great at everything you do.
I suppose that it's not necessary for this to be there for second story work to be useful, but I'm really imagining from any spy movie or any heist movie or even Netflix's Arcane, some little purse snatcher or something running across rooftops, being chased by the cops or, chasing down a rival thief or something, and just being able to hop from roof to roof. If you don't have that, are you really a thief? I don't know. Is this really a spy movie? Is this really a heist if we're not chasing each other across the rooftops?
So in addition to second story work, the thief gets another feature called Fast Hands. This also featured in 5th edition, but slightly differently. This kind of got the lore bard's treatment. Whereas a lore bard in 5e could pick new skill proficiencies, the lore bard in 1D&D got certain proficiencies. They became more specific, they became more thematic, and some options were closed to them. And Fast Hands works the same way in 1D&D.
Yeah, so Fast Hands is going to allow you to get additional options for your cunning action, which are those things that would normally take an action, but now you can do them as your bonus action. First off, it's going to allow you to take the search action. I feel like the rogues are just taking us through the rogues gallery of all of the different new codified actions in 1D&D. Because I feel like, we're on level 3, and we've already talked about 3 different actions that are new to 1D&D just because of the rogue and the thief subclass.
Yeah, the rogue, and probably specifically the thief, is all about getting stuff done. Doing things that take other people a longer amount of time more quickly. Making snap decisions and having those quick judgments be correct. It would require you, even in 5th edition, if you wanted to make a skill check in the heat of combat in initiative, it would require you to take your action to do so. We know this because it is significant when other creatures, like a legendary action for a dragon, would allow them to make a perception check. Mm-hmm. That means it would normally require a more significant action.
Right.
Rogues will get to make this search action as a bonus action on their turn, as a new option for their cunning action, and that could be basically any wisdom skill. Is the way it's looking. You could be insight, medicine, perception, or survival. I'm not sure why medicine's on the list, but medicine's on that list.
We're going to talk more about this once we get to the glossary part of this playtest content, but in essence, there are 2 types of actions that you can take whenever you're trying to determine anything. There is the search action and the study action, and they are divided along the lines of whether or not you are observing something or contemplating something. Search are the actions where you are looking for something. You are taking stock of something. You're taking in new information regarding another creature's state of mind, their ailments, looking for something that might be concealed, or whether you're hunting for tracks or food. And those are divided up amongst the skills insight, medicine, perception, and survival, as you just said. These are things that rogues can now do just like that.
And this new ability for a rogue to take the search action, as we just defined, as a bonus action, is only half of what Fast Hands gives you. You can also, with your bonus action, make a dexterity sleight of hand check. Either to pick a lock or disarm a trap, or to pick a pocket. It is quite specific that those are the 3 things that you could do with your bonus action, but it's more quickly than anyone else could do them, and you can do it incidentally as part of a move, as part of an action, and this really feeds into the idea of a deft practitioner of the larcenous arts.
You know, those listed actions are very similar to the ones that you were presented with in 5th edition. The only difference being that 6th edition adds picking pockets, whereas 5th edition had the somewhat open-ended use an object action. And this is another one of those subtle nuances that doesn't seem like it takes anything away, but actually does. The ability to use the fast hands feature to use an object as a bonus action actually would have let you do things like use a healer's kit on a downed ally without actually taking up your action to do so. I know there are a couple of other things that would have come in handy, but that was the one that I know really stuck out to me. And it's not very in keeping with the theme of being a thief, so I get why they have codified this in order to kind of exclude options such as that. But I liked the fact that my fast hands could be used for more than just larceny and burglary.
So I'm going to disagree with you there, and this might just be a DM to DM thing. Specifically with the healer's kit, the item of the healer's kit specifies that it takes an action to use. Because it is multiple, it's a kit, right? The use an object action in the player's handbook presents ideas like opening a door or quaffing a tankard of ale and other things. That is a more defined action. And maybe this is just me being like rules lawyer-y, but I think it is the intent in 5e was to give you the opportunity to interact with 2 objects, not to use 2 tools. Either way, in 1D&D, the option to pick a pocket, that door being opened, as someone who plays rogues, is very inviting. I would like to do that, please. I could run up, stab a guy, and steal from him in the same turn.
So the use an object action in 5e says when an object requires your action for its use, you take the use an object action.
Mm-hmm.
So when a healer's kit requires your action for its use, that would be taking the use an object action, and then I believe that the fast hands would supersede that, turning it into a bonus action.
That is definitely a way to read it, and that's not a bad argument. I imagine the healer's kit being, it says it's a pouch containing bandages, salves, and splints. I imagine you can't pull one thing out of the kit and slap it on any injury and just be done with it, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the fact that you could treat an injury and stabilize a dying person in 6 seconds, even as an action, is already a little bit ludicrous.
Yeah.
Fast hands or not.
It's an action feature.
I mean, real life first responders would probably just have their jaws hit the floor if such a thing were possible. I think that this is a good thematic choice. It is a minor loss of power, especially because you can do things like, healer's kits or use your tools or things like that. I'm not particularly upset about it. Hopefully other people won't be either, and maybe it gets left this way. I know that there are some people out there who do see this as a bigger deal than we do.
So, 4th level, same as everybody else. You get a feat. Well done, you.
Oh, thank goodness. One that we can just breeze through.
5th level, you get the same thing that you got at 5th level in D&D 5e. You get Uncanny Dodge, and your sneak attack die upgrades to 3d6.
And finally, your proficiency bonus goes up to +3, just like it does for every other character. I'll say it whenever it comes up because proficiency bonuses are particularly important to everyone now. Although so far a little less important for the rogues, oddly enough. The main thing that a rogue gets from their proficiency bonus is their expertise. They don't have any class features so far that has had its use limited based on their proficiency bonus.
Right, and the ranger didn't really either, other than the expertise. That was kind of a bard thing. I'm going to go ahead and call it now. I think the barbarian's rages per long rest are going to be tied to that. And maybe some other features as well, but that's more me being cocky than anything else. Speaking of Uncanny Dodge, works exactly the same as it used to. There is not a change, except that it specifies that you round down, which 5th edition always specified that you round down. here you get a quick reminder for ease of use.
Reading over Uncanny Dodge, the words are different, the meaning is the same. Unless you've noticed something we don't, and if you do, let us know. Moving on to 6th level, we get another subclass feature. And for the Thief, that is Supreme Sneak, which is the same name as the next subclass feature for a Thief in 5e that you didn't get till 9th level.
Ooh, upgrades, people, upgrades.
Upgrades, well, maybe. We'll talk about how I feel about that in a minute. But at any rate, the names of these two abilities are the same, but they do function differently. In 5th edition, a 9th level rogue using the Supreme Sneak feature would get advantage on stealth checks if they moved no more than half their speed that turn.
Sure, you tiptoe, you get advantage.
Right, makes sense. You go slower, you can be a little bit sneakier. Going fast is usually associated with not being sneaky.
And Sonic the Hedgehog.
Gotta go fast. In 6th edition, I keep saying 6th edition, in One D&D and or 6th edition, I'm gonna call it that because that's what it is, and that's what we'll be calling it 3 years from now. Supreme Sneak now will offer you advantage on stealth checks that you make provided you aren't wearing medium or heavy armor. The same effect if you meet a different prerequisite. And honestly, the 1D&D version is probably better.
Not only are you getting it 3 levels sooner, but you can move full tilt using the Supreme Sneak. And you can be cunning action dashing with this as well. You can be a regular speed demon and still get advantage on your stealth checks. This is a good ability because rogues come in all shapes, they come in all sizes, but advantage on their rolls and getting that sneak attack is the core of their class, and an easy way to do that is to get that hidden condition. So pretty much every rogue out there wants to be good at stealth.
You're right.
It's probably where you put your expertise, and now you're getting advantage on it every time you roll it, unless you have gone out of your way to wear armor that you are not automatically proficient in.
Right. So looking at Supreme Sneak in 5th edition, it says if you move no more than half your speed on the same turn. So that is a pretty big deal because it means you're basically locked out of using the dash action in 5th edition. Whereas now you're right, you could go pretty much as fast as you want. You could use your bonus action and your move to move, dash, and you could still get advantage on that dexterity check. 6th edition, 6th level rogues have unlocked Naruto running.
They can go full balls to the walls and continue to stealth better than anybody else in the game, at least until the ranger hits, 17th level, 14th level? When did they get that cool ability? At least until the rangers can go invisible.
Oh, 13th level. I'll never forget 13th level rangers.
So, you know what? However we're going to feel about the rogues for the rest of this conversation, however we're going to feel about the thief for the rest of the conversation, having permanent advantage based on your class, on your most important skill, I'm not going to fault that. I'm not going to get tired of that.
Moving on to 7th level, we get our 4th D6 on our sneak attacks, and we also gain expertise again. Now, in 5th edition, we got this feature at 6th level. Things have kind of been swapped around here in the middle, and there are some parts of it I'm excited about because I get cool things earlier, and there's some parts I'm not excited about because, my favorite thing got pushed back a bit. As much as I enjoy Supreme Sneak, it did push expertise back 1 level for me. And the most damning thing is pushing that evasion back all the way to 9th level when I used to get it here at 7th.
Right, the 5e rogue would be enjoying evasion right now. Evasion is one of those cool, I'm a rogue abilities that you want to get. Dexterity saving throws, at least in 5th edition, were one of the most common saving throws you had to make. Rogues are already proficient in them, and wouldn't it be nice that when you succeeded, you got off scot-free? Because most dexterity saving throw spells and effects usually subject you to half damage even if you do succeed, and rogues can turn a success into 0 damage and even a failure into half damage. Having that pushed back 2 levels is not fun.
Yeah, I like Supreme Sneak a lot. I would rather have evasion at 7th level. But it is what it is, I guess. This is how they've rearranged things, and they've kind of spread some things out. I'm always excited to get more expertise. I wish it was earlier, and I wish evasion was here, but evasion is still on the table for me to get as we move forward. Speaking of moving forward, we move on to 8th level where we get another feat.
I love it when the feats come up because it's such a short conversation. It's you get a feat. You know what to expect. We're done. We'll talk about more of the feats in a future episode. But yeah, it's easy, and it comes up 6 different times for the rogue?
Yes, the rogues do get it a little bit more often than all of the other classes. Not quite as much as fighters did in 5th edition. We'll see how many fighters get in 6th edition. I'm sure it will still be the most. But while everyone does get a feat at 8th level, the rogues will get an extra one here in just a bit.
And you know what? I feel like that's fair. And that was the same in 5th edition as well. Because something that a rogue does not have in common with the 2 classes we have already looked at is that it has no spellcasting. All a rogue has is their wit and their talents, and they need a few more talents and a little more wit to get by.
I couldn't agree more. I don't know that 1 feat makes up for not being a spellcaster, which I think is why arcane tricksters are so popular.
It depends on the feat.
I don't know about that. Spellcasting's pretty good, especially the more classes they make prepared spellcasters. I wonder what the arcane trickster will be, if it'll be a spells known or a spell prepared. So far, we haven't seen any spells known classes, which makes me really, really hope, against all reason, that the sorcerer will be a prepared spellcaster. Maybe with just a very limited number of spell schools. If they go through them in the order that they're presented in this playtest packet, the experts would be covered first, and then they'd move on to the mages. Boy, I hope they do that, because I need that question answered soon. I know that pact magic is still a thing based on some stuff in the glossary, and I just really want to know who the spells known spellcasters are, if any, or if we can just move to everyone being prepared.
Look, if you didn't have to worry about the bard, I doubt you would have to worry about anybody. But we'll see. Beyond 8th level, we reach 9th level. Guess what? 2 levels later than 5e, you get evasion. It works just like in 5e. Can't use it when you're incapacitated. Half damage on a failure, no damage on a success for spells and effects that would subject you to a dexterity saving throw. It's a good thing, and it works the same way.
The only difference between this and the 5e version is that little line they tagged onto the end that states that you can't evade while you're incapacitated, which I think is kind of weird that you could in 5th edition. So I think this is just another one of those housekeeping things where they realized that they allowed something they didn't intend to, and they've gone back to fix that in 1D&D.
Yeah, good point. I mean, frankly, that should have been in there.
Anyway, moving on to 10th level. This is it. This is the level where you get the feat that no one else does. Ta-da! That's it.
We finally made it. But a feat isn't the only thing you get. At 10th level, you get a second feature as a rogue because every subclass gets a feature at 10th level. So here you go. Not only do you get a feat, you get your 10th level thief subclass feature of use magic device. Now, this one comes with a little bit of history. Back in the early editions of D&D, one of the special things about a rogue was that they could use magic items that were meant for other classes. They could basically deceive the magic item or handle it in such a way with their knowledge of arcane items such as this in a way that other classes could not. And that flavor has stuck by the rogue in the thief subclass for literal decades. And here we see that flavor punching through. A thief is able to use magic items differently than other classes.
You know, in 5th edition, the use magic device feature for the thief was 2 sentences. In 6th edition, it's 3 paragraphs. So it has gotten a little bit more complicated, but for my money, it's gotten better. Even just the first of these 3 features is huge. That feature being, you can now attune to up to 4 magic items at once. That is 33% more magic items than every other character in the game.
That's not nothing.
Save for artificers, of course. I know there's someone telling me, oh, except for artificers. Yeah, they don't have artificers yet. I'm sure they will. I'm sure they'll be able to attune to a lot of magic items. They'll be able to attune to the most magic items. But the thief, rogue specifically, does get 4. And attuning to magic items as you level up is one of my favorite parts of D&D. So that does make the Thief subclass a little more appealing. This feature is not an ability on its own. It's the ability to select something later on. It's the ability to not have to choose between your third magic item being the Stone of Good Luck or a Ring of Protection.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Take both. Also, when you are using a magic item that requires you to use charges to make it function, you roll a d6. Regardless of what the item says, you as the thief roll a d6, and if it's a 6, you use the property without expending the charges, any charges. It doesn't matter how many charges the item has. It doesn't matter how many charges the particular function of the item would require you to expend. A rogue who rolls a 6 on that d6 doesn't expend any.
I'm looking at the way this is worded, and I'm trying to decide, and I believe that you roll this d6 before you determine how many charges to use. And if I'm right about that, and you're holding a wand of magic missiles, you could just unload that sucker whenever you rolled a 6.
I'm not sure about that.
Granted, 6 isn't going to come up that much.
17% of the time, something like that.
And I could be wrong about that. You may have to decide how many charges to use beforehand, in which case, you're probably going to play it safe and you're just going to get less value out of this. But I don't know. I don't feel like this is so likely that it's going to be particularly impactful. But you know what? Every once in a while you'll use it and you'll think, oh, that was cool.
That depends entirely on the magic item that you are using. Some magic items will allow you to use single charges for small effects and multiple charges at a time for significant actions that are different from the smaller actions. It's not just how many charges you pump into a wand of fireball to increase its level. It's, do I get to warp time and space, or do I get to cast Thunder Wave?
Right, and that's why I'm very hopeful that you get to roll the d6 before you select how many charges to use.
Oh, I'm not worried about that. I just like that there is any class or subclass out there in D&D that has the option to warp time and space twice without breaking the item.
I wonder, is like the Ring of 3 Wishes and stuff, is that technically a charge? It's charges, man. The Ring of 3 Wishes says that you can expend one of its 3 charges to cast the wish spell from it. There is a 1 in 6 chance that you can cast the wish spell for free. DMs, don't give your thieves a Ring of 3 Wishes. It might turn into the Ring of 4 Wishes. No, Rob, you can't wish for more wishes.
A thief might be able to.
Unless you're a thief, apparently.
Even after the charges, you get a additional way to use magic items. Let's talk about scrolls. So a thief, even though they don't know any magic, can use a spell scroll for a cantrip or first level spell, no problem.
Automatically.
It does not specify a spell scroll. Any scroll of first level or a cantrip that a thief comes across, they can use, and they have a chance to use magic of higher levels on scrolls that they come across as well. And interestingly, this is the first time that the thief has needed anything other than dexterity anywhere on their sheet.
Well, the thieves are proficient in dexterity and intelligence saving throws, so one would hope that you would put a couple of points there. And plus, as a skill monkey, I guess I say skill monkey because that's, I guess, an antiquated term. As one of these expert classes, there are a lot of skills that rely on your intelligence that you would probably be interested in picking up as a thief. So I feel like it's a secondary stat for them, maybe a tertiary stat, but it is one that would make sense to have a little bit higher than others. You definitely wouldn't be making intelligence your dump stat as a rogue, certainly not as a thief. But I like this feature because it gives the thief some versatility, but also it makes spell scrolls important to someone out there.
They were important to wizards now, copying it down into their spell books.
Sure, but, it was useful to copy the spell. It wasn't useful to use the spell scroll. And I feel like just all the games that I have played in 5th edition, the importance of scrolls has been downplayed because only the class that could cast those spells was capable of using the scroll. So, if your bard was trying to use a spell scroll that contained a spell that wasn't on the bard list, then it wouldn't work. It was basically there to save casters their spell slots, not to grant them access to something that they couldn't already do. And I'm happy to see that the thief actually does get to make use of those spell scrolls. Like you said, cantrips and first level are automatic. And then if they want to cast a spell scroll of a higher level, they just have to make an Arcana check with a DC equal to 10 plus the spell's level. And if you put expertise in Arcana, that's going to be pretty easy by this point.
Which, if I'm playing a thief and I know this subclass feature is coming, I am putting proficiency and expertise in Arcana to make me able to succeed at this as often as possible.
And you're going to spend all of that gold that you pick from other people's pockets and use it to buy more spell scrolls, because that's what I would do.
And this is a nice way to kind of bridge the gap. This isn't the Arcane Trickster, this isn't the spellcasting rogue, but it gives you the ability to interact with magic where you lacked it up until this point.
The nice thing about this is if you can find the spell scroll, you can cast a spell of any level with a sufficient Arcana check.
Right, and the DC is never going to get higher than a 19. Rogues can clear 19 in their sleep if they get expertise in something.
So weirdly enough, as long as you can pay for it, a thief becomes actually a fairly proficient spellcaster.
Pay for it or get lucky in loot. Now, I will note that the Use Magic Device feature is not a stranger to the Thief subclass. The old Thief, or should I say the current Thief in 5th edition, gets access to Use Magic Device at 13th level, but it looks very different. 3 levels later in 5e, what a 5th edition Thief would get access to is the ability to ignore class, race, and level requirements on the use of magic items. Now, that is pretty good, not gonna lie. It is very different from what the One D&D Thief is enjoying 3 full levels earlier. The One D&D Thief gets to attune more magic items, gets the ability to use magic items without expending their charges, and the ability to use scrolls when they're not normally a magical caster. And I think, this is entirely a guess, by the way, that the way that One D&D is going, that this is because there's going to be less of an emphasis on magic items that are class-locked, race-locked, and level-locked. So, here the Thief gets different abilities that are still very useful and relevant to the upcoming edition.
You know, my opinion of this ability is going to change significantly once we have the rules on spell scrolls for other classes and subclasses. Because if it is set up that you can use spell scrolls only from your own tradition, it's still going to be better than the way it was in 5th edition, but it's still going to be fairly limiting. But the more limited it is for everyone else, the better the Thief gets. And I contend that this is significantly better than the previous Use Magic Device, and you're getting it earlier. Or this is the first time that I'm significantly more excited by the 6e Rogue Thief than by its 5e counterpart. Oh, well, I say that, but I was pretty impressed with Supreme Sneak as well. So, I don't know, where I feel like the Rogue is falling behind, I feel like the Thief is charging forward.
Speaking of charging forward, let's move on to 11th level. 5e and 6e rogues both enjoy reliable talent here, and they appear to work the same way. Whenever you make an ability check that lets you add a skill or tool proficiency, you can treat a d20 roll of 9 or lower as a 10. Now, the verbiage has changed since 5e, but not in a way that has any obvious implications, unless they monkey with something else behind the scenes, unless they change what any of these words mean to us. Reliable talent is coming in at the same level and working how we expect.
I don't think I've ever read reliable talent before. It's everything you're proficient at. Because I play an eloquence bard, right, in our online campaign, and I got it to pick 2 proficiencies to basically gain this ability on, but rogues just get it across the board. Wow, that's insane. So, this is going to be a huge boon to the Thief subclass, both for those running advantaged stealth checks that they get to make, and especially when it comes to using high-level spell scrolls.
Right. If you're proficient in Arcana, you reliably get to use the spell scrolls. And apparently jumping is a skill check now. So you'd better be proficient in athletics or acrobatics, And now you're succeeding on those as well.
I am looking at the 11th level rogue who has a proficiency bonus currently of +4. And if they had expertise in Arcana, then a thief could reliably, unwaveringly, unerringly cast spells of 8th level or lower using spell scrolls.
Regardless of what their intelligence modifier was?
Regardless of what their intelligence modifier was. So if they had even a +1...
Oh, damn.
Even if they had a +1 in intelligence, they could cast 9th level spells as an 11th level thief rogue.
So long as there was a scroll, and as a dungeon master, I don't know about you, but I don't leave a lot of 9th level spell scrolls lying around.
Dungeon masters, be fucking careful. 11th level rogues can now cast Wish, even if you didn't give them.
They're coming for you.
11th level thief rogues can cast anything that you give them a spell scroll for.
At only 11th level.
It's either don't give them the spell scroll or give every enemy they come up against counterspell. Those are your only options moving forward. I am suddenly terrified of this, and it's very exciting.
And we were down on rogues.
I don't know. See, that's the weird thing about this. I still feel like I'm not crazy excited by rogues. But man, the thief subclass is good. It's real good. Okay, notably also at 11th level, you're getting a 6d6 on your sneak attack. I forgot to mention at 9th level, but we're still getting an extra d6 every time we have an odd level.
Let's move on to 12th level. It's a feat.
It's a feat. Moving on to 13th level, we get a +5 proficiency bonus, which is the second highest that it's going to get this whole time.
Which is a +10 proficiency bonus for 4 of our skills.
Exactly. It's even more impactful because of all this expertise that we're getting as an expert class. And your sneak attack, because we're at an odd level, bumps up to 7d6. But that's not the most interesting thing about 13th level.
Hey, at 13th level, we get a brand new rogue class feature. Subtle Strikes. This rewards you basically for doing what you were already doing. Remember how you got the opportunity to use sneak attack if you were attacking an enemy that was nearby one of your functioning allies?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I do remember that.
Now when you do that, you get advantage on the attack roll. No matter what else is going on, no matter what other extenuating circumstances may be affecting the combat, you get advantage. So this is not giving you sneak attack where you didn't have sneak attack before, let's be clear. This gives you a greater likelihood to be able to use that sneak attack in that circumstance without having to go through the drudgery of finding a place to hide and making an attack from cover or getting advantage on the attack roll some other way. This is all the time.
This is the only feature so far that we have been presented with for the 6e Rogue that is completely unique to 6th edition. Granted, the Thief, even though the names of the abilities are all the same, has been fundamentally changed in a bunch of ways that make it awesome. But as far as the Rogue is concerned, while some nuances are different, it still functions in very much the same way that the 5th edition Rogue did. This is the first ability that kind of breaks the 5e mold and gives you something new to play with.
And you know what? No matter if it comes in at 13th level or 3rd level, I'll take advantage where I can get it.
You'll take advantage of this ability?
This is not reinventing the rogue. This is not changing how I am fighting. But this may mean the difference between me targeting this character that I get sneak attack on in one way, or this character that I could get sneak attack on in one way and get advantage. Nearly every turn, depending on your party composition or the types of enemy you are facing, this means perpetual advantage if you are willing to take advantage of it.
Take advantage. You know, the hallmark of the rogue class, to me, is consistency. Whether that is being expressed by your expertise, or by your reliable talent, or by the ability to do things with your bonus action that other people have to do with their actions, it's about being able to do what you set out to do unerringly, unwaveringly, reliably. And I think that Subtle Strikes is the same way. It's doubling down on something you're already doing and making you better at it, making you do that job more consistently. In this case, that job is hitting the enemy.
If you are playing a rogue, you don't want to fail. If the rogue fails everyone is in trouble. Because this is the skilled class. This is the expert among the experts. This guy has got nothing going for him except his success rate. So yeah, I very much get what you are talking about.
And this is probably a very late in the game to be discussing this. But the fact that Subtle Strikes exists is good. I like it. But it does make me miss Steady Aim from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, which was an optional class feature for rogues that you were able to unlock at 3rd level. And Steady Aim did allow you to get the opportunity to make a sneak attack where you otherwise wouldn't have it, where the 6th edition rogue has no such feature. For those of you who might be unaware, the Steady Aim feature allowed a rogue to sacrifice their entire move for the turn and their bonus action, but they got advantage on their attack for the turn, which meant that even if they were fighting someone in single combat as a non-swashbuckler, they could get advantage and try to get in that sneak attack. I wish that Subtle Strikes or some feature that we got beforehand, I felt like it was a very valuable addition to the Rogue's kit, and I honestly expected to see it somewhere in here. That doesn't diminish the value of Subtle Strikes. It makes me wish that we had that too.
Well, before we go on to 14th level, 2 things about that. First of all, I think this version of the Rogue is going to be able to generate that advantage more easily by using their movement and their bonus action rather than giving them up. By going and finding the qualifiers for the new hiding rules.
Yeah, the hide action.
And being able to attack from a hidden position and generating it that way. And also putting some distance maybe between themselves and the target. Secondly, I think this was probably meant by the subtext of the phrase steady aim to be a sniping feature. And I'll be damned if we're probably not going to see some sniper-focused roguish archetype somewhere down the pike. But I don't disagree. I think that was an interesting thing. I like having tools in my tool belt, whether or not I use them. But I don't think that if I were playing this version of the Rogue, that would be something that I would miss.
And you do bring up a good point about this hide action. Maybe if you move around the battlefield, you'll probably be able to create that advantage using the hide action. I mean, goodness, if you have expertise and reliable talent at this level, when you get here, you're going to be unable to not generate the hidden condition. As long as you can find 3/4 cover, you've got it made in the shade. Literally, the shade would also help you hide, presumably. But I'm like you. I would have liked to have seen it here because I like to have more options. And on the times that I have DM'd for rogues, it has been something that I remind them of frequently, that they have the ability to do that. Maybe in 6th edition, I'll just be reminding them to hide then.
14th level, though. You get a new subclass feature. It doesn't sound new. It's called Thief's Reflexes. This is what the final subclass feature was called for the 5th edition Thief. But this works very differently.
Yeah, I think that's a recurring theme here. All the abilities have had the same names for the Thief, but they all do something crazy different. Like, for context, the 5th edition Rogue's Thieves' Reflexes allowed them to take 2 actions during the first round of any combat. Basically, they got free action surge. Yep.
They could take a second turn the first round of any combat, not a second action.
Oh, I apologize. That's correct. A second turn, once at their normal initiative and once at their initiative minus 10. That's pretty good.
That's damn good.
I've never played a 17th level rogue. I was thinking that this was going to be something like action surge, but no, that's significantly better. And that happens every combat? That's better than most classes' capstone abilities.
Now that's the 5th edition rogue, and they're getting that at 17th level. We are neither in that edition, nor are we at that level. This is the 14th level One D&D Thief. And what they get, I'm honestly more excited about. And maybe it's just because I'm getting it 3 levels sooner, or maybe because it is every turn.
I haven't read it yet, but you're going to have a hard time selling me on something that's better than an extra turn in the first round of every combat.
So I know combats have a reputation to be over quickly one way or the other, but at 14th level, the One D&D Thief takes a second bonus action on their turn, provided it is the bonus action from Cunning Action. They can do this a number of times equal to their proficiency bonus, which is 5 right now. and will be 6 in only a couple of levels, and regain all expended uses when they finish a long rest. So, number 1, don't read that as their second bonus action can be a cunning action. Read that as you now get a free second bonus action, because your first bonus action can now be anything. Only one bonus action has to be from the cunning action list. Both could be, both don't have to be. I don't know what bonus actions are going to be made available as we continue to develop 1D&D, but you just got yourself freed up. You got an extra third of your turn 5 to 6 times per long rest. A rogue that knows what they're doing, and if you're playing a rogue and you made it to this level and survived, I hope you know what you're doing, can make big use of that.
Oh, okay, so this is kind of sneaky good. Get it? Sneaky good? Anyway, it's kind of like a mini action surge almost. I mean, it's not giving you another action, it's giving you another bonus action, and they are kind of limiting you as to what you can do with it, which I guess is empirically weaker than action surge in a lot of ways. But the big thing is you can do this a number of turns equal to your proficiency bonus, like you said, currently 5 times per long rest. And I'm already putting some combos together in my head where if I am not hidden behind some cover and I would like to make an attack, I can use a bonus action to hide, go ahead and make that attack, get my advantage, get my sneak attack, and then move and hide again. Go ahead and be set up for next turn. Also, the speed that you can get as a rogue, moving, dashing with your bonus action, and dashing with your thieves' reflexes was previously only even contemplated by monks. Maybe even tabaxi monks at that.
Maybe it's just my game design brain firing on all cylinders here, but there have been mechanics that have given you an additional turn, and there still are. There have been mechanics that give you an additional action, and there still are. Name another feature that gives you an additional bonus action on your turn.
Yep, can't think of any.
I can't think of any either. This is a cool new ability, rife with opportunities, depending on where they go forward from here, depending on what options they are giving you from here. There are other ways that your teammates can cooperate by casting spells on you or taking different magic items, but even with those things, as we understand them in 5e, this is a very unique opportunity presented to a 14th level thief.
Yeah, you make a good point there. Moving on from 14th, we come to 15th level. We've made it to 8d6 on our sneak attack, and we now have unlocked the class feature, Slippery Mind. I'm going to go ahead and talk about this one because it's short and sweet, and I'm very excited about it. The 5th edition Slippery Mind gave the rogues proficiency in the Wisdom saving throw, which is the most commonly targeted saving throw in 5th edition, and I'm sure that it's still going to be a very popular choice in 6th edition. But the 6th edition Slippery Mind feature doubles down by not only giving you proficiency in the Wisdom saving throw, but also giving you proficiency in the Charisma saving throw, meaning that any rogue of 15th level will now be proficient in 4 out of 6 saving throws without taking any feats. Because we already know that the Resilient feat has carried over into 6th edition, a rogue of this level could easily be proficient in every single saving throw. And that is just crazy. It wouldn't even be hard.
Right. At least 2/3 of the saving throws out there. Now, I will say that getting the Wisdom, very important. Love that. Again, as you said, it comes up so often. Charisma saving throws do not come up that often, at least not in 5e. They're typically possessions or displacement from this plane to the next.
Banishment, right?
Right. Those are the kind of things that target charisma saving throws. However, when you fail a charisma saving throw, it's bad.
The whole party is going to take notice for sure. It's not going to be a little extra damage.
You are gone. You are possessed. You are fighting the party now. It's a very high stakes saving throw, kind of like intelligence saving throws. They don't come up that often, but when you fail them, oh, you feel it. So it's nice to have a little extra security blanket on those bases. And now, Strength and Constitution, some of the least common saving throws in the game, is all you're lacking.
Charisma saving throws are the sort of thing that the whole party has a stake in. Anyone in the party fails a charisma saving throw, the whole scope of the battle changes from that point forward. So I'm very happy to see that as an addition here. When I was doing some of my research, as I am wont to do, I looked into how often certain saving throws were challenged by the various spells in D&D. And what I came to discover is that the most often challenged saving throws are dexterity and wisdom. And I looked through all the starting classes and realized that no starting class in the game begins with dexterity and wisdom saving throw proficiencies.
No, of course not. That would be too good.
Most classes will have one or the other, but no class had both, except for the rogue at this level. So even if they had only left it as adding the wisdom saving throw like they had in 5th edition, that would be incredibly significant. But the fact that they have added the charisma onto it as well is just very, very tasty icing on the cake. And empirically better than its 5th edition counterpart.
Look, I was going to say I'm documented, but I don't think I've actually talked about this. Resilient is a dang good feat. It barely didn't make my list of top 10 feats, just because it was not going to be interesting to talk about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If I'm not proficient in dexterity or wisdom saving throws, especially if I'm playing a class that gets an above average number of feats, I am taking proficiency in one of those saving throws, especially wisdom saving throws, because I hate my character being out of my control. So the fact that the 2 saving throws that take my character out of my control in a combat are covered by this class feature makes it grade A, A-OK, A1, awesome class feature in my book. I wish I could take it twice.
You know, I want to say I underestimated the resilient feat, but now that I'm playing in this online game that I've definitely mentioned a couple of times, I'm running a lot more combats, and I'm still participating in PvP, and as someone who's playing a bard in this campaign, these PvP matches can get really frustrating because I'm doing the PvPs with like the same group of people who are around my level, and they've started to take resiliency and wisdom saving throws, and that might as well be a death knell for a bard.
Oh, did you say knoll?
Not a regular knoll.
Regular knoll.
A death knell. Is that what I meant to say? A death knell. Moving on from 15th level, we get to 16th level. Guess what? It's another feat. It is what you want it to be.
And the next few levels are going to go by pretty quickly as well. 17th level, you get elusive. Once again, in a familiar sort of fashion, no attack roll has advantage against you while you aren't incapacitated. Incapacitated is going to shut rogues down on more levels than 1. Try and avoid that if you can.
And it is exactly the same as the 5th edition, one of the few instances where literally nothing has changed. This was a pretty good feature in 5th edition, still a good feature in One D&D.
It also marks your first level at having 9d6 on that sneak attack. We've got one more improvement coming very soon.
Almost there, guys. And also, this is it. We've hit our +6 proficiency bonus. It's finally as big as it's going to get. We are at peak rogue as far as skill checks are concerned.
Maximum efficiency. It's very exciting, but bears very little discussion.
Right now, guys, life is good, but it can be better.
I used that joke.
To that end, let's talk about the 18th level feature, Stroke of Luck. This is very reminiscent of the 5th edition rogue's capstone ability, whereby they could turn an attack that misses into a hit, or they can turn any fail on an ability check, which, let's be honest, is incredibly unlikely, into a 20. However, in 6th edition, in One D&D, we can turn any failed D20 test into a 20. Notably, this includes attack rolls.
D20 test is a broader spectrum than what we are used to in 5e, and a 20 lets you auto-generate a crit, as you were alluding to, not just in the realm of succeeding outside of combat, but into giving yourself a lot of extra damage at this level on your sneak attack.
Right.
You can use this feature once per short rest or long rest, and we're getting it 2 full levels sooner than the 5th edition rogue, alongside getting this upgraded definition.
And this is one of those features that makes me very curious where Wizards of the Coast is going to land on critical hits. Whether or not it's just going to upgrade the damage die, or whether it's going to work like it did in 5th edition. As far as this playtest packet is concerned, it works exactly the same way as it did in 5th edition, meaning that you would double your sneak attack damage as well.
18d6 is a lot of d6.
And for the sake of the rogue, I hope they keep it that way, because that is going to feel so much better than just an extra d8 or whatever your weapon's damage die is.
Hey, for the sake of Misty Mountain Gaming, I hope they want you to roll more dice as well. We can, code Twins 10.
Rolling dice is what a lot of people enjoy about D&D, so if you give them more dice to roll, they will be happier. And I didn't mention this earlier, but a d20 test also encompasses a saving throw, meaning that in the rare event that your increased proficiency in 4 out of 6 saving throws in the game fails you, or that you are tested on one of the saving throws in which you are not proficient, and it becomes very important that you make that save, you can now generate an instant save.
And let's not forget that a 20 in 1D&D is different than a 20 in 5th edition. In 5th edition, if it's not an attack roll, a 20 is not an automatic success. It still cares what your modifiers to the roll are and what the DC is. In 1D&D, if you roll a 20 on that die and it's a d20 test, you succeed. No other factors considered.
And that is one of the things that they are going back and forth on as they release these playtest materials. Who knows where it's going to land eventually. But it very well could stay that way. And don't forget that if 6th edition works the way that 5th edition does, you can reasonably expect to have about 2 short rests per day, meaning that Stroke of Luck's probably going to come up about 3 times. And that feels pretty good. You can decide whether you want to use those on saving throws, attack rolls, ability checks. D20 test is a broad term, and getting a 20 is always fantastic. Maybe life-saving, maybe game-changing, maybe letting you drop multiple handfuls of dice of damage onto an enemy. It's a good ability. I like seeing it here as an improved 18th level ability a lot more than I liked seeing it as a mediocre capstone for the rogue back in 5th edition.
Oh, I thought this was one of the better capstones that they had, but I'm excited to see it as an 18th level feature rather than a 20th level feature.
Oh, it might have been. The bar was just really low in 5th edition.
Let's go to 19th level, where you get another feat.
Another feat. You get to pick it. Picking feats is good.
Also, you're now enjoying as much damage as sneak attack can possibly do at 10d6.
Peak rogue, baby. After this, we go to level 20 and we get to pick an epic boon. But other than that capstone ability that you get to pick, 19th level is the pinnacle of everything that makes a rogue a rogue. When you transition to 20th level, you make your rogue different from all the other ones.
And that's it. When you take spells out of the equation that rangers and bards got to consider, the rogue is a much narrower stream. A rogue is very focused on what it does, and let's face it, exceptional at what it does. There are so many fail-safes as you get through the higher levels to essentially prevent failure. If you never want your character to be embarrassed by a bad roll or by an untoward moment, a rogue is a great class for you because you are going to be synonymous with success as you go throughout your character progression. And by featuring the Thief subclass, we are shown how to make your rogue better in different areas, giving them a few more options in how to interact with the world and more to do on their turn that was previously locked to them, and in the case of the Thief's reflexes, locked to everyone.
Like I said before, to me, the rogue means consistency. And I think that sums up everything that Rob just said. You are going to be the best at whatever it is that you decide that you want to specialize in, even far and above the other expert classes. Because expertise is great, but it can be better. Because you can pair it with reliable talent. Reliable talent is amazing.
And supreme sneak. And stroke of luck.
I tell you, my rogue will have the lucky feat too whenever I make them in 6th edition, just to make sure that failure is practically impossible. A foreign concept to this character.
I wonder if halflings will still be incapable of rolling ones, and if a halfling rogue will just be unstoppable in 6e.
Halfling was already put into the character origins in the first playtest material released for 1D&D. We didn't cover them, but they do still have the luck feature, and it says whenever you roll a 1 on a d20, you can re-roll the die and use the new roll.
Man, that is, with the way they're treating natural ones on d20 tests, that's pretty stinking attractive.
It's just staggering what you can do with that character concept. So, I think we very safely covered how I feel about the rogue and the thief, which is to say that the rogue maybe feels a little bit lower power than the 5th edition counterpart, at least until you reach a certain level. Once you begin to flirt with the concept of high-tier play, I think the 6th edition rogue starts to run away with it. And I think that the 6th edition thief is better at every level with every subclass feature that it unlocks than its 5th edition counterpart. Rob, where are you at as we try to wrap up the rogue? What are your feelings on the new version and its new subclass, the thief?
So, this is an odd duck for me. For the Bard, I was very sad with how they handled the early levels, but by the time we got our groove on, I liked the 1D&D Bard. I can say that more thoroughly now that I've taken a little time to get away from it and the initial pain of those first few levels as we started looking through this document. But I do like what they're doing with the Bard and the Lore Bard. It doesn't excite me as much as the Ranger does, which I still haven't quite gotten over. I'm so thrilled to play a Ranger because it is everything that I wanted from a Ranger and its subclass. For the Rogue, I'm pleased. Like, I feel like I've sat down at a restaurant, I have ordered a meal, and been delivered what I ordered. Like, this is nothing exceptional, this is nothing outstanding, my expectations are not blown away, but I'm also not disappointed by anything that I've got. A few things have been shuffled around, a few things have been tweaked, but this feels like a rogue to me, and the thief feels like a thief to me. And maybe I wait a couple of levels to get one thing or another, but I just feel like it's an entree being delayed by a few minutes. I'm still getting what I wanted to get. This is a weird analogy, I know, but this feels right.
I would like something comped for my delay. For my inconvenience of having to wait.
I don't know, this just feels right. This looks like a rogue. It plays like a rogue. If someone were to bring this to my game, I would have no issues with it. If I were to play this in someone else's game, I would be happy to play it.
I've got a new question for you then that I didn't ask you with the other classes, but I think that I probably will moving forward. Out of all of the features presented to you by the rogue and or the thief, which among them is your favorite? I'll tell you this for free. For me, it is the use magic item feature of the thief subclass. Out of all the features that just help you achieve consistency, that use spell scroll feature that allows you at that level to unlock almost any spell in the game you have a scroll for, reliably so, is just very exciting. I think that's possibly the most open-ended feature that the rogue has on their list.
That is a good one. I will put that in the same boat as I put the old Ranger's favorite enemy. That is extremely dependent on what the Dungeon Master puts in front of you. But it's very good, and it's less swingy than it appears when you take expertise into account, and assuming that you put a skill proficiency into Arcana. And that at the very next level, you will be getting the answer to your question, my favorite rogue class feature, reliable talent. I cannot stress enough how much this feeds into my desire to be the guy for something. And this doesn't make me the guy for something, it makes me the guy for everything that I am proficient in as a rogue. I can't fail. How can you take anything over not being able to fail?
Yeah, good grief. I don't think I'd ever really paid much attention to reliable talent, but the fact that everything you're proficient in gets that bump is crazy. Well, because I never played a rogue of that level, Rob. You're my DM. Where's all my high-level campaigns, Rob?
It's right there with all your kids.
My first experience with reliable talent was playing a College of Eloquence bard and being told, oh, this functions like reliable talent. The Silver Tongue ability of a College of Eloquence Bard is that at 3rd level, they can't roll below a 9 on Persuasion and Deception. And people would ask me in the Discord server, you're like, oh, hey, how are you getting that ability? And then someone else would chime in, oh, he's a College of Eloquence Bard. He has reliable talent, or like a version of it. And I'm just like, oh, so it functions like reliable talent. Rogues probably get to pick 2 skills that they can apply this to. But no, rogues get it on everything they're proficient in, which is a minimum of 6 skills plus thieves' tools, plus maybe 1 or 2 more, depending on your background options, I think. All of those things, you have a minimum of 14 before you apply your ability score modifiers. Now, granted, your ability score modifier could be a negative.
And probably higher than that, because you're an expert at this point in your level progression in at least 4 of those things.
Right, which is a majority of those skills. A majority.
Failure is not going to be in your vocabulary as a rogue. And if you are playing a rogue like I play a rogue, you're going to be playing to your strengths. You are going to be putting yourself in situations where you are rolling the things that give you this reliable talent. You are going to be asking your dungeon master to roll these things. You are going to be allowing other people to do the things that have a high risk of failure and putting yourself in situations where you have the greatest possible chance of success. And it's going to feel so good.
So the nice part about Rob's favorite feature is that it is not DM reliant, and it is not even dice reliant. Right there on your character sheet, you are designed to succeed. My favorite feature is fairly DM reliant, so hey, all you DMs out there, let your thief rogues be cool, okay? You don't have to give them wish at 11th level, but give them access to some spells that they would be excited to cast. It's okay if you make them pay for it. Give them a couple of cool ones for free in the loot.
Goodness knows they're going to be picking the pockets of all of your enemies with their bonus actions after they stab them.
But don't make this a meaningless subclass feature by not providing them with spell scrolls to loot or purchase, because you can make this the coolest part of being a thief, or you can make it nothing. So, let your players have fun, be the cool DM, give them the ability to use the class features that are on their sheet, give them the ability to sometimes, in some situations, be a very proficient caster, as long as they pay or loot for it.
So, that is a look at the One D&D Rogue and the Thief subclass, and our opinions on it. That is 3 episodes down, 16 pages down, 21 to go. We still have a good bit to cover to get through all of this content. Some rule changes, some clarifications, and several feats, including those epic boons.
And a whole spell list to take a look at as well. There's plenty still to discuss. In the meantime, what's your favorite feature of the Rogue and or the Thief? Come onto our Discord and tell us about it. Did we miss anything when we were going over the Rogue class? We did with the Bard. We might very well have with the Ranger. That's still under review. Let us know what we missed about the Rogue, and we'll put it into the errata when we release the next episode.
Because everyone loves that disgruntled gramophone sound effect, I'm sure.
You know what? That really annoying sound effect is just an example of our commitment to accuracy, whether or not we get it right the first time.
And join us for the 4th time, as Steve and I will be back to talk about the rest of the Expert Classes 1 D&D Playtest PDF very soon.
Yes, we can't wait to bring you the next topic for discussion in this playtest material, where Bardic Inspiration will be featuring, well, feats. The outro music you're listening to right now is called Mega Epic, and the intro music is called Super Epic. Both were composed by the wonderfully talented Alexander Nakarada and utilized under a Creative Commons license. If you enjoyed our content, please consider leaving us a 5-star rating and review on your listening app of choice. To keep up with us on social media, look us up on facebook.com/Bardic Twinspiration and on Twitter @BTwinspiration. Want to interact with us directly? Come join our Discord. After all, who are we if not people who are willing to roll the dice on making some new friends? Links in the description. Come check it out. Here's the thing that I thought as I was going through the Bard and the Ranger. I looked at their packages. I'm not going to say that.
Yeah, don't.
Yeah, there's a blooper for you. And to those people, we're sorry. We didn't write this stuff. We're just reading what's on the page.
I'm seeing that fella from South Park. We're sorry. Sorry.
Sorry.
The BP oil guy? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. From level 1, big shocker, we progress to level 2. Level 2. Sorry, that was a bad joke. You coughing is actually funnier than the gag you were about to do.
Gasp. When will you learn that all my ideas are good ones?
Is that a Star Wars reference?
Dude, it's Emperor's New Groove.
That's right. I'm editing that out, but tequila's good. I want a constitution skill called just get crunk and just be able to have a proficiency in partying.
Get crunk? Like you mean like get crunk? I'm pretty sure that's crunk.
I said crunk.
I'm hearing crunk, like from the Emperor's New Groove again.
You've just got that on the brain.